Well, good morning, and it's a beautiful morning down here in the southwest of England. A little cool last night, but nonetheless reaping the benefits right now. Although there are quite a few dark clouds in the sky, but we'll take advantage of this beautiful morning right now. Well, it's the morning of Tuesday, 1st of May, 2018, and I know a lot of people were hoping that April would be the end of May. Well, it might not have been the end of May, although it should have been, but it was certainly the end of Rudd. And of course, Amber Rudd, forced to fall on her sword after being caught lying. I mean, unfortunately, in modern day politics, lying is a prerequisite for becoming a politician. Gone are the days when politicians were held in high regard by their electorate. Now, the vast majority of people realise that the significant number of MPs are not to be trusted. They are there purely for self-interest. Now, not too many people are going to be sorry to see Amber Rudd go, and hopefully she goes the whole hog and resigns from Parliament, forcing a by-election in the constituency of Hastings, where she only got re-elected last year by a very, very narrow margin. And in fact, depending on which report you believe, there were multiple recounts before she was actually announced as the winner of that election. So there is the distinct possibility that if there was a by-election, then the Tories would lose it to Labour. So in all probability, the party whip will be begging her to stay and making some promises that they have no intention of keeping to keep her actually on the back benches. Now, Amber Rudd moving out as Home Secretary, of course, she has some history, because prior to this, she was Secretary of State for the now defunct Department of Energy and Climate Change. And it was while she was in that position that Lancashire County Council rejected Quadrilla's application to drill and frack on the Fylde. And in response, in a fit of pique, she actually overturned a ruling that had been standing for some 13 years to prevent the halite gas caverns being established on the northern end of the Fylde Peninsula at Fleetwood. And she basically overturned everything that had transpired over the previous 13 years and said, yep, absolutely, push ahead with that. And of course, it was subsequently revealed that her brother, Roland Rudd, actually heads up the company that looks after the PR for halite. So, you know, once again, in days of yore, that would have been regarded as blatant corruption. But, you know, it just passes for the norm now in the corrupt banana state of Oceania that was once known as the UK. So Amber Rudd moves out of the role of Home Secretary, and she's replaced by Sajid Javid. And Sajid Javid is a former merchant banker, in fact, very rapid rise to fame. And in fact, I think he was on the board of Deutsche Bank when he left to go into politics, and reportedly earned some £3 million in his last year on the board of Deutsche Bank. And as Communities Secretary, he wasted no time in effectively determining that the Lancashire decision to prevent Quadrilla from establishing their well sites on the Fylde should be overturned. But he'd go through due process and establish an inquiry. Well, the inquiry subsequently passed their recommendations to him, so we know not what the detail of the recommendations was, but the recommendations went to him, and he ruled that Quadrilla should establish the well site at Prestonhue Road, the only well site that's at risk of being fracked this side of 2019, and also stated that he was minded to overturn the decision of the planning inspector on Rossiter. And of course, a further inquiry concluded there last week to revisit the new traffic management plan. So Sajid Javid is a corporatist turned politician. He was put into politics to push the agenda of the global banksters. And so, you know, him as communities minister was yet another oxymoron. So he has now moved into the role of Home Secretary. And one can be absolutely certain that whatever decision he takes will be in the best interests of, or perceived to be in the best interests of the corporatocracy, because he certainly, as MP for Bromsgrove, does not have the best interests of the country at heart. Now, Sajid Javid has been replaced by James Brokenshire. That's a rather unfortunate name, and one hopes that it's not somewhat prescient. But this is what is happening. You know, the shires are being broken up. The shires are being destroyed. The creation of city-states is starting to emerge, and of course this is an agenda that's being pushed right across the whole of the world right now. But James Brokenshire is the new Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. But an interesting background. Now, he's actually been in Parliament since 2005, but he's a young MP. He's about the same age as Greg Clark, so about 50 or so, and not necessarily regarded, apparently, as overly ambitious, which perhaps is a good thing. But he has been in Parliament since 2005, when he was MP for Hornchurch. But in 2010, that constituency effectively was dissolved with the boundary changes. And so he was given the safe seat of Old Bexley and Sidcup on the borders of Kent and Greater London. And he was actually appointed as Secretary of State for Northern Ireland when Theresa May was re-elected just last year. But he had to resign from that position in January when he was diagnosed as having lung cancer. Now, he's a non-smoker, but he was coughing up blood and subsequently diagnosed as lung cancer. Had some surgery, took 5 weeks out before returning to the backbenches. Well, obviously the whip considers that he's now recovered sufficiently to take over from Sajid Javid. So here's the thing. Here's a individual that had a rather rapid awakening, having contracted lung cancer, having had some surgery. Apparently that was very successful. And now he is put into a role where he has the power to potentially condemn large tracts of the population to carcinogenics and potentially expose some 15 million people across the north of England to the risk of cancer because of the presence of the unconventional gas industry. So obviously it's a new man to lobby. This is the way the government works, you know, put somebody new in there. Especially if the predecessor, of course, wasn't stepping up to the plate. But Sajid Javid was, but he's now got promoted, obviously, to Home Secretary. So this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for a whole new set of lobbying to James Brokenshire. And let's particularly focus on the health issues, because James Brokenshire, more than anyone else that's held this role, should be extremely sensitive to the risk of developing cancers as a result of living in close proximity to industry. Now, it doesn't always follow, of course. You know, we saw that in North Yorkshire with Third Energy, where the head of their security company, NLSS, was a cancer survivor. But there he was, heading up the security company, pushing or supporting Third Energy, a company that had intended to frack in North Yorkshire and, you know, would have potentially exposed the residents of that area to the carcinogens involved in the fracking process. So, all to play for. And 5G actually, in some respects, you know, pushes fracking perhaps into the hinterland, because You know, fracking affects a significant chunk of people right across the north of England, and this has to be their focus. And sadly, the people in South Yorkshire are now getting the double whammy because Sheffield is very much the focus to roll out 5G. And that's why the trees are being culled there. And as somebody pointed out to me a few days ago, they said, you know, don't think for 1 minute, Ian, that the pause has anything to do with the awareness of 5G. It's actually due to the fact that it's the wrong time of year to be culling trees because the sap's rising and you know, the birds are nesting. Not that that's going to stop the sociopaths of Amy from attempting to fulfill their £2.2 billion contract. But what we are seeing now is that this tree culling is becoming a major issue all around the country, and reports are coming in from communities all around the country that the trees are being cut without any consultation. People are literally coming home from work and finding the trees outside their houses or in the parks literally pared right back to the point where they will die, and then the trunks have to be removed. But a few days ago it was announced that British Rail, or what's left of British Rail, or Network Rail I think it is these days, are actually in the process of culling potentially something in the region of 10 million trees. 10 million trees. And you know, when I talked about this with a railway engineer, he laughed and he said it's very clear that those who are taking these decisions have very little understanding about the engineering associated with railway embankments and railway cuttings, because the trees were planted by those Victorian engineers to give the embankments and the cuttings strength to prevent landslides. And so he made the observation that this is literally a disaster waiting to happen, because you cut the trees, the roots die, the soil gets loose, and you're looking at landslides. But let's not let that in. Let's get the right teeth in this morning. Let's not let that get in the way of the need to roll out the 5G technology, when much of the rail network in the 2020s will effectively be run via artificial intelligence. So we have this phenomenal rush towards the technocracy, the technocratic control grid that Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote about in Between Two Ages, the Technotronic era, back in the late 1960s. And I would implore people to read that book. It's freely available online. It's called Between Two Ages, the Technotronic Control Grid, and or the Technotronic era, actually, I think it was called. But anyway, I will put a link to the PDF download beneath this video. The PDF runs to, I think it's about 112 pages, but it's absolutely essential reading, because back in 1969 or 1970, when it was published, it looked just like a sort of visionary document, a think tank report. But, you know, the technology to actually impose it didn't exist. Now it does, or we're on the cusp of it. And as Brzezinski observed, he said that the time will come when government is effectively a technocracy and they will rule through technology. And he made the observation that this technocratic elite will not be constrained by traditional liberal values. And I had a radio discussion last night, or an online discussion with a few people, and one of them said, well, you know, what was he really trying to say? That we really don't give a damn and we can do what the hell we like just to keep everybody in their place. I said, that's pretty much what it is. They don't give a damn. But if we, the generation that is reaching the latter part of our time on this mortal coil, have any concerns about the legacy that we are leaving future generations, then we absolutely need to get involved. And this week we have the elections, local authority elections, and Sheffield will actually be electing a mayor, a city mayor, for the first time. And this is an opportunity to elect an individual that will hold the council's feet to the fire and will insist on the full content of the Sheffield County Council contract being released into the public domain. But if people just sit back and let this unfold, then sadly the legacy is not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. And well, I don't know about you, and the fact that you're actually watching this would suggest that you probably are motivated to try and contribute in some way to bringing about the changes that we all know we need to see. So, do whatever it is that you feel you can do. Share in whatever way you can share. The establishment are trying to restrict the alternative media. It just means that we need to grow more alternative media outlets. Instead of a big rock being thrown into the pond and the ripples pushing out to the shoreline, it now has to be small pebbles just thrown into the water, and all those multiple ripples all interconnecting and eventually reaching the shoreline. Because we have a battle here, and it's a battle for the future of humanity. We are being attacked on so many fronts right now. It's really no wonder that some people just go, nope, don't want to hear it, don't want to see it, and I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand and carry on, doing what I'm doing. And that's completely understandable. But it needs a few more percentage points of people to actually get involved. When the US had the War of Independence against the might of the British forces, it's estimated that only 3% of people actually took up arms, and only 8% even wanted independence. The rest were just apathetic. So those that are apathetic really don't have a big role to play. The issue is between the establishment and the increasing percentage of people that are realizing that the establishment are not looking after their best interests. So my counsel today is, please do some research. Look at the issue of the tree culling. Sadly, there are people in Sheffield who are campaigning to resist the felling of trees, but literally are in denial about the relationship between the tree felling and 5G. It's just a stretch too far for them. And I understand that too. But the fact is that at least they are campaigning against the tree removal. But the fact is that the driving force behind this is the rollout of 5G. The academic papers, not least, those produced by the University of Surrey and their 5G Technology Centre, spell it out that trees are a major problem for 5G to be functioning so that they can roll out the Internet of Things in 2020. So do your own research, and if you have the opportunity to participate in the forthcoming local authority elections just a couple of days from now on May the 3rd, then despite the fact that I know there's a lot of people who refuse to vote, but you know what? The irony is that the establishment really don't care. They don't want people to vote. That's why in some areas, they haven't even bothered putting out any hustings information, any flyers, any info on the candidates that are standing. They don't want people to participate because they know that if people start to participate for the first time, they are not likely to be voting for the incumbent candidates. But ultimately, the choice is, of course, down to each and every one of us. So that's it for today. I'm going to clearly be focusing on the final preparation for the forthcoming AV9 event, which is shaping up to be a truly seminal event. The caliber of the speakers, and indeed the caliber of people in the audience. It's going to be 3 days, and I'm sure that some initiatives will emerge from this event. So if you're interested in coming along, then take a look at the Alternative View website. That's alternativeview.co.uk. And although at the moment there aren't any residential tickets available, there are still a considerable number of day tickets available. So otherwise, I will see you on Thursday morning, not tomorrow morning, but on Thursday morning, polling day, with another update. Thanks for joining me, and have a great day.